Hello and welcome everyone to today's session. Today in this session we will continue on the project on pointers, arrays and strings. So this is 0 by 06. The first one was by 05, right? So this is just a continuation of pointers, arrays and strings, but just that in this case the tasks are a bit advanced, okay, than the first one. So let's see how we can come up with this. So make sure you read through the materials and understood the concept of arrays, pointers and strings. Okay, so now let's see what we are going to do here. Let's move to the tasks. So before moving to the tasks here, make sure you create this repository, right? And your directory here. I've already done that. As you can see, I've already navigated to that, right? And secondly, what I did here is that instead of me to be always opening my header file, I've already copied all the prototypes. Let me show it to you guys. So you can see I've already copied all the prototypes for this task here, so that it will save time. Okay, so and as you can see I've also included the stdio.h, the standard library as well here. So there is no need for me to always include it in any file. Okay, so this is what I've done. And also I've also included putka as well. If you can see here, as you can see there is putka, right? I've included putka, and here is the function for putka here. So vi, as you can see, this is putka. I copied it from the repo. Okay, so I pasted it here. So this is what we normally do before we begin, right? So I just tried to do this so that to save time. All right, so what does this task here says? It says write a function that concatenates two strings. Okay, so this is the prototype. It says the function appends src string to dest. So what is concatenate? It's just like adding two things. Let me show you here. So let's say your name is Mike. Let's say your name is Mike, right? So when we talk of append, it means we are trying to append something to another thing. When we talk of concatenate, let's say your name is Mike, John here is your dad's name, for instance. So if you want to concatenate John with Mike, at the end we will get what? We will get Mike, right? Then John. So this is what? This is concatenation. So now we've concatenate what? John to Mike, right? We've append what? We've append John to Mike. So that's just what concatenation is. Okay, so let's see here. Already we are told that the function appends src, right, to the dest here. So we are going to append what? Src to dest. So this dest is where we are going to be appending to, right? Overwriting the terminating null byte. You know, this is how it is stored. Like I said, let's say I have Mike, just like I initially stated. Let's say Mike like this, right? Then what? We have the terminating null byte here, right? So I have John. Also here John has this as well, has the terminating null byte, right? So this is how they are. So forgive my handwriting. Okay, so this is how it is stored. So I want to append this. This is what? This is the source here. This is the source, and this is the what? This is the dest. I don't know why the text is not coming out clearly today. So this is the dest, right? So what it's saying is that when you append this to this terminating null byte should be removed. Okay, so to append this, of course, if you are to append, we have to remove this part here, right? This part has to be removed because what we are adding another set of characters. Terminating null byte is not supposed to come in the middle of string, so it has to come at the end. So as far as I'm appending this to this, then that terminating null byte for this has to go. So when the terminating null byte is no more here, then I will append this to this. So it will become what? Mike John. Then at the end I will have a terminating null byte. So when you have to concatenate, the terminating null byte of the destination you want to append to has to be removed, right? It has to be removed. Then after appending, right, then the terminating null byte will come at the end, because terminating null byte is not supposed to come at the middle or the beginning of a text. It only comes at the end of string, right? So this is just what this is saying here. That's what the question is saying. So it says to dest overwriting the terminating null byte at the end, and then adds a terminating null byte. So the return is a what? A pointer to the dest. Let's see how to do this thing. Let's see how to do this. And I think if we begin, you guys will be able to understand what I'm trying to say here. So vi paste here, right? So let me copy the function name, the prototype. So I will have to include my standard library here, right? Sorry, hash include, sorry, my header file, I said standard library. So then paste the function here, then this. So now let's begin to write our function. But before that, there is something you need to know. Let me go back to this here, right? So before we do all these things, we have to know the length of the source string and we have to know the length of the destination string. Don't forget, we are going to iterate, we are going to loop, right? So that's why I said we have to know the length of the first string and also the length of the source string and also the length of the destination string. You are going to see what the use of that will be. So now let's try and determine the length of these strings here. We have the dest, as you can see, and we have the word the source. So let's determine the length of all of these two arrays, set of strings here. So I will first declare my variable here. Let's say for the destination, I want to name the variable destlen. We all know how to determine the length of a variable. We've seen how to do that several times. So I initialize it to 0. Then I will also for the source, I will say source len. Also I will initialize it to 0. So this will hold the different length of these strings. Okay, so what again here, I will have to declare my I for iteration, right? Since we are going to use a loop. So now let me find the length of these strings now. So I will say for I, right, equals 0, right? So I will say dest. I'm finding for the dest now. So dest I, as you can see, dest is what is the variable name here, is the pointer. So dest I, we all know how to do this, is not equals to the terminating null byte, right? Then what again? Then let's increment our I, right? So now we will then say what? We say dest len. Here we are determining the length of the destination string, right? Then I will say plus plus. So this will give us what here? So this variable here will store the length of these strings. For each iteration, it will increment. We all know what this means. So now it's time to get for the what? For the source. So I will say for I as well, I'll begin my iteration from 0. Then I will say the source here, I, right? The source I is not equals to what? The terminating null byte as well, since we are iterating from the first to the end. So this is how the condition should be. So I plus plus, right? So I will now say what? Source len plus plus. So this variable here will store the length of the source string. Okay, so hope you understood what I did now. So what I did here was just to determining the length of the source string and the dest string. So what am I going to do next here? So what I'm going to do is concatenate. Don't forget, I'm adding the source string to the dest string, right? I'm adding the source string to the dest string. So I'm iterating over the source string. Don't forget, I want to append the source string to the destination string. So I will have to iterate over each character of the source string. Let me try and show you this here. This is, let's say this is the source string here, and this is the dest here. Wow, I don't know what's wrong. So dest here, right? So I want to append this to this, right? So I have to iterate over each character of this to append it here. There's no need for me to iterate over the source. Okay, sorry, I want to send this here to this. Sorry, I want to append source to dest. So I have to iterate over each character of this source here, right? SRC. I have to iterate over each of this character. For each iteration, then I will send it to this destination. For each iteration of source, send here. For the next iteration, send here. That's how I append, right? So let's see how we are going to do this. So now we've determined the length of these various strings. So let's begin our looping. So I will say I equals to 0. Okay, so when I say loop here, we are trying to iterate over the source string. Okay, since we are appending the source to the destination, so it is the source string that we are only interested in looping, right? So now what should be the condition? I can simply say my I now should be less than the source length here. Hope you understood what I just did here. Should be less than, or equal to. It should be less than or equals to here. So this condition here is saying, begin your iteration from the first index, right? From 0, from the first element, from the first character of the string. So what should happen for you to stop at this case? The value of I here has to be less than or equals to the length of the source. Okay, if the length of the source, if the value of I is more than the length of the source, then what happened? Then we will get a segmentation fault. We will get an error because what, our iteration has now exceeded the source of the length of the source. Okay, so we should stop if the source has 10. If the size of the source is what, is 5. If the size of the source is 5, it's just as I'm saying, okay, stop this iteration whenever I is less than or equals to 5. Because the source length is 5. So I have to stop at 5. So if our iteration exceed the length of the source, we are definitely going to get an error because it has exceeded even the number of length. Right? It has exceeded the length of the string. So we just have to set our condition that for the iteration, right, the iteration should be less than or equals to the length of the source. Okay? So now I will say what? I will say I plus plus here. This should be okay. Hope you understood this condition here. So then what next here? So I will simply say dest. Now I want to append for each iteration, right? For each iteration I want to append. Before I add what is in this bracket, let me show you this. So I will now say srci. So what does this do? This will append each iteration of I. It will loop over what? Over the source character here, source string. And for each iteration, it's going to store it inside this dest. So you have to give the index where this dest should be stored. So I can simply say what? I can simply say dest. If I say I like this, what will happen? If I is 0, right? It's going to what? It's going to store the 0 index of source to what? To the 0 index of dest, which is what? Which is not what we want, because it will overwrite what is there already. We don't want to overwrite, we want to append. We want to append. Okay, so where do we want to append? We want to append after the last character of what? Of the destination file. That's why we try to find the length of the destination file. Okay, so here what will happen? Here, instead of me to say I will say dest length. Don't forget this variable here holds the length of our string. Right? I will say dest length here, then I will say plus I. I know this is a bit confusing, right? All what I'm trying to say here is that the iteration here, after iterating over the source, the 0th index, for instance, if I is equals to 0, I want you to store it in the length plus I of dest. Let's say we have, let me show you something here. Let me see if I can write. I don't know why I'm having a difficult to write over this thing. So what this is saying is that I already have these variables. This string. Let's say I have this string SIR and then this here. Right? Let's say I have this. Okay, so I have another here. Let me say YOU, right? YOU, just randomly. So I'm trying to append this, right? I'm trying to append this to this. Okay, I'm trying to append this to this. So since I'm trying to append this to this, I will have to know the length of this, right? In this case, it is what? It is 3. So since I know the length now, so for each iteration of this, I want it to be stored in the length plus I index. So this means that the first index here is what? Is 0, right? The first index here is 0. So 0 plus what? What is the length here? Length is 3. 3 plus I is 3. That's 3 plus 0, which is equals to what? Is equals to 3. So I want the character here y to be stored in what? In the in the third index of the destination strings. That's just what this is saying. So the third index is what? This is 1, 2. Sorry, this is 0, 1, 2, this should be 3. Sorry, I can't write on the screen today. I don't know why. So this is 3 here. So it's going to append this to the last what? To the next space after the last character of the string. So that's just what this does. So that's why here I'm saying what? For each iteration of I want you to store the value in the what? Length of dest plus I. If the length of destination is 5, then 5 plus 0, that's for the first iteration, is 5. So it's going to store it in the index 5. That's the 5th index. Okay, it's going to store it in the 5th index. If I increment to 1, then this is what? This is 1. So SRC1, that's the second character of this source, is going to be appended to where? To the dest length plus I, which is dest length plus 2 in this case. So it will append it to the what? To the dest length plus 2 index of what? Of the destination file. I hope this is clear. I hope this is very clear. So this is just how this works. Okay, please and please learn to get extra things. Okay, learn to read extra. This is for ALEX alone. You cannot understand all these things. There are materials, like I said, it's kind of confusing at times. You have to go extra. Okay, read some material, Google some things. Okay, there are a lot of places you can get all these things now. Just Google some things, go to YouTube. There are a lot of videos that explain these things in details the way you can understand them. Okay, so now what next? That's just it. We've appended what? Source to dest. Okay, we've appended source to dest. So the next thing is what? Is to return. It says we'll return a pointer to the resulting string, which is dest. So I'll just say return dest. It says a pointer. Don't forget, this dest has already been declared as pointer, so I don't have any problem adding asterisk here. If I add asterisk here, it becomes what? A dereferencing. Okay, so hope you got what this is. Just try and brainstorm this code. Okay, try to understand the concept. One thing I would like to advise you is just this looping thing. Learn to do these loops. Almost every task we'll be doing here involves loop. Okay, so now let's do our Betty documentation. All right, so let's go here. So this, all right, so let me paste this. So what does this does? I will say concatenate two strings, right? Sorry, this is not supposed to be there. Then what again? Then the variables at dest. Okay, so I will say destination, right? I will just say destination. So at source, I will just say the source string. Or let me say destination string. Here, let me say the source string. Then what next? Then return. So our function is returning a pointer, right, to a dest. So I will just say return what? I will say the destination string. Okay, so hope this is clear. So let me close this and let's now run Betty here on this file. So Betty, okay, so Betty is fine. So let's create our test file here. Let me copy this, right? So it's vi 0 main.c, right? Main.c, then paste this here. All right, so save and exit. So now let's compile the program and see if it will work. So paste here, then all right, so you can see it has been compiled. Let's see if we will get the desired output. Yes, so you can see we got what? We got hello with an exclamation, hello world, and this. You can see we got this the way it's supposed to. So that's simply what concatenation is. Please refer to external resources if at all you don't understand my explanation. So don't forget to add, commit, and push, then run your checks. Okay, I know it will work because I've already run Betty. Betty is fine, and then I've gotten the required output done. I think there's no problem. If there is, we'll figure it out. So let's move to the next task here. So in this task here, it says write a function that concatenates two strings. We are concatenating two strings again in this case, but with a little variation from the above problem. It says function is similar to this, the one we did above, except that it will use at most m byte from source, and source does not need to be null terminated if it contains n or more bytes. Returns a pointer to the resulting string. So in the above example here, in the above task, we concatenate entirely what is in the source, right? What is in the source string to what is in the dest string. So in this case here, all what we are required to do is that we can give the number of string we want to copy. Okay, that's also what this is saying. You can give the number of string you want to copy. Like I said, in the above case here, just like in the above case where we use this, we copied the entire string that is inside this source into what? Dest. But in this case, when the value of n is passed, it's like you are interested in only concatenating the n value of source. So if n is 10 here, sorry, let me use smaller numbers. If n is 2 here, it's just like you are saying, okay, I want to concatenate only 2 strings of source to what? To dest. That's just what this is saying. I'm not interested in concatenating everything of source. I want to concatenate 2 strings. If n is 5, I want to concatenate only 5 strings of this source to dest. I'm not concatenating all of the things, all of the strings in source. Hope you understand this. So let's see how we can come up with this. Before that, let me copy this main file. Sorry, this test file here. Let me just copy it. So vi1 main.c, right? So paste this here. Good. So let's save and exit. So let's copy the file. This is it. Copy. So vi. So let's paste this here. So let me include my header file, main.h. Okay, so let's copy the function prototype here. So this is it. Copy this, paste here. Okay, so how do we do this now? So we have to get the length of the source string and also the dest string, just like the way we did initially. So I will simply say int, right? I use dest length initially. Let me use it again. Is 0. Then what? I will say dest int, sorry, the source length as well should be initialized to 0, right? Then I will initialize my I for what? For my iteration. So let's begin finding the length of this dest and source string. So I can just say for, right, for I equals to 0, right? So for the dest, I will say dest I, right? I'm sure you must have been familiar with this by now. So this should be the null byte, right? And then what? I plus plus. So I will simply say what? Dest len plus plus. So now this will help me to get the what? The length of the dest string here. So the next is for the source, right? I will say for I equals to 0, right? Then src, I'm doing for source now, should be I here. I not equals to 0, then I plus plus. Okay, so now I will say what? Source len plus plus. So this will what? This will store the value of the source length, right? So now let's begin our iteration here. So I will simply say for, we are beginning our iteration from the first index, right, which is 0, index 0, right? For I equals to 0 here. So what will be my condition in this case, right? Where do I want to stop my iteration? Since I'm interested in printing only n characters, sorry, in concatenating only n characters, so I will simply say my I should be less than what? Should be less than n. If n is 5, then I'm printing how many characters? I'm printing 5 characters, right? I'm sorry, I'm concatenating 5 characters. And 5 character, and the 5th character is what? Index what? Is index 4, because index begins with 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you count from 0 to 4, you get 5. That's why I use less than, because I don't want 5 to be included. If int here is 3 here, so it means I want what? I want to concatenate only the first 3 characters of this source string to what? To dest. If n is 10 here, right? It's just like I want to what? I want to concatenate the first 10 write the first 10 characters of the string inside this source to dest. That's just what this is saying. So your condition should stop as soon as what? Sorry, your iteration should stop as soon as I is less than n. If I is equals to n, it will not run. So this will help you to concatenate the nth string of source to dest. Okay, so I'll increment this now and say I plus plus. So what next again? So I will now say the same procedure we used initially. Dest len. I want to concatenate to dest len, right? Dest len plus I. I already explained y is plus I, right? Then I will say equals to src I here. Right? Hope this is clear. So just like for each iteration, right, check that particular index of source. For that index of source should be appended to what? To the destination. So I've already explained this in the previous this thing. So if you don't understand, just ask. We'll try as much as possible to see we figured it out. So now we are done with the loop. So at the end we are asked to return what? Dest, right? So I will simply say return. So this should be dest here. So we are finally returning the final concatenated strings, that is dest here. So that's just what I did here. Okay, so let's do our Betty documentation here. All right, so Betty. Okay, so this is what I will say concatenate two strings. I will still use concatenate two strings. Then what again? At dest function parameters, I will just say destination string, and then at source, right, I will say source string, and then what again? We have at n, I will say number of characters to be append, right, to be append. So we are returning dest, right? So I will just say return concatenated string, right? Return concatenated string. Sorry. Okay, so now let's run Betty here. Betty 1 str. Okay. Yes, so Betty is happy now. Let's compile and see if it will work. Okay. All right, so let's run the compiled file. So you can see we got what? We got exactly hello world. This is it, right? We got this as well, world. As you can see, we got exactly what is required here, right? We got everything that is here. Okay, we got the exact output here. But it's just that in this case, I can see I'm getting this error. Let me try to see why I'm getting this code dumped error. Let me open the file again. But you can see we've gotten the correct output, right? Let's open the file. Let me try and see why I'm getting that error. Okay, I can't seem to see the reason, but what we are going to do is just add commit and push to your repository. Let's see, and run the checker. If it checks, then fine. If it doesn't, then we'll find a means to get rid of this this thing that is just showing here. I don't know why it's showing, but you can see we've gotten the output, right? We've gotten the output. So let's clear my screen and let's move to the next task here. This task here says write a function that copies a string. In the previous project, we've written a function to copy a string, but in this case here, we have n here. So just like the one we did above, we said n is the number of characters that we want to append. That's in the above problem, right? But in this case here, n is the number of characters that we want to copy to dest. That's just what this is. So let's see how to come up with this. Let me open the file, or let me copy this file first. The test file. Let me copy. So let me say vi. Sorry, vi what? vi2 main.c, right? Main, right? So let's paste. Okay, so let's save and exit now. So the next thing is to open the file here. Let's copy this. So vi, paste, This is it. So let me include my header file, main.h. Okay, so the function here, the function prototype, this is it. So copy this, okay. So we are trying to create a function similar to one we did, which we copy strings from from the source string here to the dest string here. Just that in this case here, there are number of strings we are interested in copying. Okay, so I will simply say int I am iterating. Okay, I want to loop, so I will simply say for, I will iterate over my source distance. I'm interested in copying the content of this to this, right? So I will simply say for I want to begin my iteration from 0, right? Then what should be the condition here? My iteration should stop when I is less than or equals to the number that is passed to the function here, which is n. Okay, since we are given if n in this case is equals to 2, then I want I to stop when it is less than 2. So when it is less than 2, it means it is 0, 1, right? If you count 0 and 1, you can see we got we got 2 elements, right? We got 2 elements. So we are interested in copying only those 2 elements. If n is 5 here, if the parameter passed to the function is 5, then what? Then this is saying that, okay, print, stop your iteration when I is less than 5, which is 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So if you count from 0 to 5 to 4, you have what? You have 5 elements. Okay? That's just what this is saying. So it should not exceed n, and n is the parameter that is passed to the function, which tells you which tells the function how many number of characters it should copy. Okay? So I plus plus again. So we are done with this now. So what should we do here? So I will say dest. In this case here, we are copying from source, right? So source I, for each iteration of I, store that iteration in this array of dest, right? So what should be here? Now, I'm copying. Okay, I'm copying. So I want to copy index 0 to what? To index 0 as well, the first iteration, since it's copying. Okay, I want to, if it increased to 1, I want to copy what is in source index 1 to what? To dest index 1. I'm not appending, I'm copying. Exactly what should be here should be here. But just that here there are limited number of strings that I want to copy. So I think this should work like this, right? So I will just say what? I can simply just say return what? What should it return? It should return dest here. Okay? Hope you understood this. This is just a simple this thing. So let's try to do Betty and see. So let's run Betty on this now and see. Betty to this. Okay, so trailing white space in line 13. Let's see. Okay, so this is line 13. It says there's a trailing white space, so there's a white space at the end. Okay, yes, I think it has been solved. So let's run Betty again. Okay, so now Betty is fine. So let's compile the program and see. Just now I realized that I was not able to get the exact output of this file. Okay, but I get some part of it worked, just that some of the parts did not work. It's just now I was able to realize that. So let's check. So as you can see, we got some part of it correct. This, right? We got this. This is it first. This. We got everything here. As you can see, we got up to this point code up to this f. So it's just that some portion of this file is not correct. As you can see here, we are getting this f and so on, while it is not present here. So that's the error. So that's what I think is the problem. So I've been trying to figure this out, but immediately I find out, I will share with you how to overcome that. But try adding, committing and pushing to GitHub and see if you will get the answer, if you will get it checked. If it checks, then fine, but I'm not sure it will. So just understand the concept. Okay, so let's move to the next task here. So this task here says write a function that compares two strings. Okay, so you can see this function takes in two parameters, right? S1 and S2. So it compares the two strings, right? And then what? Your function should work exactly like strcmp. So So this is a standard library. So this is predefined function that is used to compare strings. Okay, so let's just see how this strcmp work. strcmp. So you can just say man on your terminal and be able to see this. So it says what? This is the description. The strcmp function compares two strings, as you can see, s1 and s2. So it's not taking into account, the local is not taking into account. Let me just see what it returns: an integer less than, equal to, or greater than 0. Take note of this. It returns an integer less than, equal to, or greater than 0. Okay, so if s1 is found respectively to be less than, to match, or be greater than s2, that means if s1 is less than s2, then it returns what? It returns where is it? It returns an integer less than 0. So that means it returns what? A negative, right? If it is what? If s1 is less than s2, then it returns what? A negative. Any number less than 0 is negative, right? If s1 is equals to s2, that is after comparing, if s1 and s2 are the same, then what? It returns 0. Okay, it says equal to 0, it returns 0. So if s1 now is greater than s2, right? S1 greater than s2, then we get what? We get it returns a value that is greater than 0, right? If s1 is less than s2, it returns a negative number. If s1 is equals to s2, it returns 0. If s1 is greater than s2, it returns a positive number. So just take note of this. Okay, take note of these things. So now let's see how we are going to do this. Just press Q here. So let me copy this file here. Now you know how the strcmp works. All you need to know is in this case is what it returns at the end of the function. Okay, so now we've seen what it returns, right? So let's open this test file here, main.c. So we are just interested in what? Comparing the strings s1 and s2, just like how it's stated here in the function. Here you can see the function parameters s1 and s2. So now let's open the file here, strcmp.c. So vi, paste here. All right. Okay, so before that, let me show you how this thing is going to be here if you are comparing two strings here. So the first one, let's say, sorry, we have s1 here, right? And s1 contains what? Let's say h a p p. Okay, just h a p p here, right? And s2 here, s2, I don't know what's wrong with this thing today. S2 here, and let's say S2 contains a small h here in this case, the small h, then a, p, p again, then y, then this is /o, your null terminator, right? So let's say we have something like this. I hope this is clear enough. I don't know why I'm having this issue today, right? So what will happen here is that it will first compare this first one here, right? It will first compare them. So as you can see here, this is S1 and this is S2. So you can see here H is capital letter, right? And H is small letter in this case. So what does it do? It first checks the ASCII code of this capital H and then the ASCII code of this small h. So let's see the ASCII codes of this capital H and small h here. I have it here. So for capital H here, we can see the ASCII code is what? Is 72. You can see it here, right? Where my cursor is 72. That's for capital H. For small h is what? Is 104. Okay, it's 104 for small h and 72 for capital H. So we have what? 72 here for capital H, and we have what? 104 here for small h. Right, we have 104 here. Okay, so what is going to happen, if you can remember, in the description of strcmp, we said we were told that if s1 is greater than what? Sorry, if s1 is less than s2, then it will return a negative. So this, in this case here, s1 is less than s2 because you can see 72 is less than 104. This is because the first encounter, if had it mean this place here is capital H not small h, then it will just move to the next character, because they are the same, right? It will just move to the next character. So I'm talking about the first encounter that is different between S1 and S2 here. As you can see from the beginning, S1, the first character of S1 and S2 is different here. Okay, so 72 is what is the ASCII for capital H, and 104 is the ASCII for small h. So which one is less? 72 is less, right? So since 72 is less, it's going to return what? A negative. Okay, it's going to return a negative value. But what is that value? The value is what? This h, what's the ASCII code of h is 72. Then the value of this small h is 104. So it's just going to do what? It's going to do 72 like this. Sorry, 72 minus 104. Okay, so when you subtract 72 from 104, what will you have? 72 minus 104 is minus 32. So this will return a negative 32. Hope you understand what I'm saying here. This will return a negative 32. It will first check, okay, it will first check for what? For the ASCII. If the ASCII code of S1 is greater than the ASCII code of S2, then it will subtract. Okay, it will subtract the ASCII code of S1, the ASCII code of S2 from the ASCII code of S1. So since the ASCII code of S1 is less, it will what? Definitely print what? A negative. Okay, so in this case here, in this case, you can see we have A and here we have A. So there is nothing here. It's compared them, and this is the same here. Let's say this place is a capital H now. The H here is capital. Okay, just like the one above, it is a capital H, right? But in this case here, it is a what? A small, is a capital A here. Let's say now we have a capital A here instead of small a. I don't know what's wrong today. So let's say here is what? Capital A instead of small e, right? So when it begins to comparison, you can see the first one here and the first one in S2 is the same. So it will move to the next, right? So it will now check for A here. What is the ASCII code of A? Let's see, that's small a. What's the ASCII code of small a? The ASCII code of small a, as you can see, is what? Is 97, right? It's 97, the decimal is 97. So we'll keep 97 here. 97, right? So it will check for what? The ASCII code for capital A now. So what is the ASCII code for capital A? Is what? Is 65, as you can see. So here will be what? Will be 65. Okay, so what will happen here is what? It will say 97 minus 65. So when you subtract 65 from 97, what will you have? You will have 32, positive 32. So at the end, your function will return a what? A positive 32. Hope you understand this. So we are going to write our function based on this. Okay, so now let me clear this and let's begin the function. To write the function, this is it. So it's here, right? Okay, so now let me include my standard library. My header file, hash include main.h, right? So this is the function parameter here. Let's copy it. Control C, then paste this here. Okay, so now you know that we are definitely going to iterate, right? We are going to loop, right? We are going to loop over what? Over these two set of strings, right? So I will say int I here. Okay, so now let's begin the loop. I want to loop over both S2 and what? And S1. Since I'm comparing, I will have to check S1 and then check S2. If is it the same, okay, then perform this, right? So I'll have to iterate over all of them. So the first iteration is from the first index, right? I should be less than, I is equals to 0. So I will now say S1, now I'm considering S1 I, right, is not equals to, sorry, this should be, yes, S1 I is not equals to what? Is not equals to the terminating null byte. So this is how we iterate over a set of string, right? This is the condition, so sorry, this should be a square bracket here, right? So I will say, so now I've checked for what? For S1, as you can see, it's S1. So what next? I will now say or, right, or S2, since I'm checking for both S1 and S2, right? I will say or S2I is what? Is not equal to the terminating null byte as well here. Hope you understood this. So it's because I'm iterating over this two set of strings. That's why I use S1 and S2 here, and I use or here. Why I'm considering this is that, let me show you, there is possibility that what? S1 might be longer than S2. S1 might contain something like this, and let's say S2 might just contain HA like this. So you can see S1 is shorter than S2, right? The length of S1 is smaller than the length of S2. So that's why I said this. So it means that whichever first reaches the idea, this condition here, the terminating null byte, then there is no need for us to continue the comparison because we've iterated to the end of one of the strings, right? So I will say I plus plus here. Hope you understand. The reason why I use this or, like I said, is because of this. There is possibility that you will get what? You will get string, one is longer than the other or is shorter than the other. That is if they are not equal, the length of the strings are not equal. So if the length of the string are not equal, that's why I considered, I say, okay, if S1, right, first reaches the null byte terminator, or if S2 first reaches the null byte terminator, whichever of them reaches the null byte terminator first, so the loop should stop because that's the end of a string, right? Hope you understand this. So now let's begin to write the condition here. So now with what we've written the condition for the looping. So now what are we going to do here, right? So in this case we are comparing, right? We are comparing. So for each iteration of S1, for each iteration of I, we have to compare it with that particular iteration of S1 and also for S2. If I is equals to 0 here, we have to compare S1 index 0, what is in S1 index 0 and S2 index 0. Are they the same? If they are the same, fine. If they are not the same, what do we want to do, right? So normally if it encounters characters in S1 and S2 that are the same, it just moves to the next this thing, right? It moves to the next character, so nothing is done. So we are only going to consider if what? If S1I, right? If S1I is not equals to what? Is not equals to S2I. Why did I do this? Right? If S1I is equals to S2I, then it means it is the same. So move to the next. So nothing should happen. But when S1I, that is when the value in index I of S1 and the value in index I of S2 is not the same. So that is when we are going to do something, right? If it is not the same, what should happen? There is another condition again we need to set. If it is not the same, we have to check, right? We have to check. Is S1 greater than S2, right? We have to check for that. Or is S2 greater than S1? We have to check for that as well, right? This happens if S1I is not equals to S2. That's the first thing. If S1I is not equals to S2I, then we have to check which among them is greater. So I will simply say if S1, in my own case here, I will simply say if S1I here, I is greater, or let me first consider is less. If S1 is less than what? S2I, right? We all know what this should return. Sorry, this should be in bracket here. Because what? The function that we are trying to copy and design something like is strcmp, and we know that from the man page we just read that strcmp returns what? A negative when what? S1 is less than S2, right? And I show you how we got that, right? We simply check the ASCII codes of S1 and ASCII code of S2, that is if they are not the same. Then we subtract the ASCII code of S2 from the ASCII code of S1. That's how we do this, right? That's how we did it. If you can remember, we did that. So this is it. This is the first condition. So if this condition is met, so what should happen? I will just say return. What should I return? What should I return? So it's simply we are going to minus we are going to minus S2I from S1I. That's just it. So it will just minus the ASCII code of S2 from ASCII code of S1. Okay, so this should be what? S1I, right? Then minus S2I here. So that's all for this condition. Okay, so this is if what? If the ASCII code of S1 that is not equal to S2, right, is less than the ASCII code of S2, then what? Then just minus S2 from S1 and return the value. So else if, right, else if what? Else if S1 is greater than S2. So else if S1I here is greater than S2I here, what should happen here? We are simply going to return the same thing. Return what? Return S1I minus S2I here. Why? Why? Because it checks for ASCII code of I, of what? Of the first of S1, and then ASCII code of S2. That's the first element that if they are not the same, that is, if they are all these things I'm doing is if they are not the same. If they are not the same, it checks for the what? For the index that is not the same. And it checks, is S1 greater than S2? If it is greater than S2, then this code will be executed. Okay? This code will be executed. So it will be what? S1, right? The ASCII code of that particular character that is not the same in S1 with what? The ASCII code of the particular character that is not the same in S2, and it will subtract it from S1. So it will return the value. So that's just what this is going to print. Okay? So it's going to print a minus or positive depending on the ASCII code, right? If the ASCII code of S1 is smaller than the ASCII code of S2 in this case, then it's going to print a negative. If the ASCII code is greater than the ASCII code of this, then it's going to print a positive, right? It's going to print a positive number. Okay? So what next here? So I think that's all. So now we've considered for what? If S1I is not equals to S2I. So else, I can simply say else. Why? This means that this else is going to mean that, okay, if S1I is equals to S2I, because in this case I said if they are not equal. But here, if I say else, it means what if they are equal? So if they are equal, I'll just say return. What should this return? It should return 0. We've seen that in the man page, right? If it is what? If they are the same, if the strings are the same, it should return 0. If they are not the same, then what? Is the string of the first one less than that of the second one? If yes, then subtract the string of the second one from the first one. Okay, if it is greater, if the string of S1 is greater than the string of the second one, still subtract it. Okay, that's how this is going to work now. Hope you understand what I just did here. So now the next thing is just to return our main function here. So I will say return here is 0. As you can see, our function, the return type is integer. So that's why this should return an int. So now Betty documentation here. So let's copy this, save and exit. So let's run Betty on this file now and see. Alright, so Betty is fine with this. So let's compile the program and see if we will get something similar to this. I just hope this should work. Okay, so I'm missing a semicolon somewhere. Sorry. Yeah, I'm missing a semicolon here. I can see it here. All right, so this should be semicolon. All right, so let's save and exit. So now what else? Let's compile the program again. All right, so it has been compiled. So let's run the compiled file. So you can see we got exactly something like this, minus 15, 15, and 0, right? So this means our code works. If you don't understand this, simply refer back to it and try to understand how it works, okay? When you don't understand these arrays and how to move around with these arrays and also the loops, this would be very, very difficult to you. So I will seriously advise you to get to understand the loops and how these arrays and strings work. I tried my best to explain all these things. Okay, so let's move to the next task here. Okay, I think the video is taking longer. I can see almost an hour. So we'll stop the video here and we'll continue from task 4 in the next video. So before I end this video, let me pass this quick information. For those that filled in the form about the C mentorship program, the form I shared I think last week, if you fill the form, you can check your mail. We've sent you an email on how to enroll in the mentorship program. And if you are still interested in taking part in the mentorship program as well, you can message the training coordinator from the link in this description, and then you'll be able to know whatever you need to know about it. Okay, we had 2 sessions so far in the training. We had a session on Monday, we had a session on Tuesday, and there will be another session today as well, another live session. Okay, we get to discuss about all these things. We started from the basics of C programming, and they will be advancing to do what? To the advanced task. I will be solving all these problems on ALX and a lot of problems regarding C programming as well. So I think it's a very good thing if you can enroll in this program. It's very, very interesting and also very, very interactive. So I think it's a good thing if you can enroll in the program. So if you have any question regarding the program, you can just message the training coordinator. The link will be in the description of this video. So thank you very much. To meet in our next session.